We'll continue now by blocking out the rest of the scene and the environment. So first thing I want to do is to kind of frame the scene so we see where are the boundaries. So let's press Shift A and let's add a circle. Now tab in and let's scale this 4 times. So S4 and confirm with the enter. So this one will be slightly different than the rest of the dioramas. This will have like a circular base. And right now we can just tab out. This will serve for the moment as only the boundary for the scene. And now let's select the tower again. And I will go to the top view by pressing 7 on a numpad. And let's move it to the side a little bit. I will press G and then move it like this. So basically the corner of the gate touches the middle of the scene. So we have something like this here. And now I want to create kind of a stone curb around the scene that will frame it into this kind of unique piece of illustration that's clearly stylized. So let's press Shift A and we'll add a cube. Now let's tab in and we'll scale this down to something like 0.3 and we can enter the value. So 0.3 on the keyboard, I will press enter. And now let's scale this on the x-axis. So S, then X and 2.5 and confirm, because I want this rectangular angle. These proportions doesn't really matter that much. We only need to match the size right now. We'll change that a little bit later. So let's now tab out and we'll look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, and let's press G then Y and move it to the side like this. So the circle kind of goes through the middle of this rectangle. And now we'll need to distribute the object around the scene just like with the shingles. So let's hold period on the keyboard to switch to 3D cursor pivot point. And now let's press Alt D and right after that press R for that chain command. And let's enter 20 and let's confirm. So this way we are now able to press Shift R several times to distribute this around like this. And now the only thing left is kind of accommodate the object to its context. So let's select the original one, tap into the edit mode. And first I want to toggle the X-ray by holding Z because I want to be able to select all of these vertices here. Let's press 1 for the vertex select and select these 2 pairs of vertices. Let's press S, then X and scale them down like this. So we have this nice circular shape here. There are several ways how you can achieve something like this. The possible way would be just to create a circle, then create a face, inset it, create these bevels, delete the gaps and extrude it up. That would work, but then it would be one large object and you would need to separate the single one for the sculpting. That's why I've chosen this approach where we just distribute the single object around and then sculpt it. Now we can tab out and let's toggle the X-ray back again. And one thing we'll need for the sculpting as well is to have some kind of rock. So we'll do that right now, but again I forgot to name the first object here and it got distributed around. So again I will just click it here and shift click the last cube, and let's press Ctrl F2 again. The settings should be the same as before and I will switch this back to set name, new, and call this curb. Okay, and right now I'll press Shift A and add a new cube. And let's press Ctrl 1 to apply the subdivision modifier with 1 level of subdivision. And immediately I will hover over this modifier and press Ctrl A to apply. You can also do that here, but Ctrl A is much faster. And now let's just go into the edit mode, scale this down on Z, so S then Z, and scale it down a little bit, just like this. Confirm. And now let's go to the local view. I don't want the rest of the scene to get in the way, so let's press slash on the numpad. And we can use the bisect tool to create a rock. So it's located where the knife is. So if you see the knife tool right here, if you click and hold, you will see the bisect tool right there. And it's a little bit unwieldy. There are a lot of clicks involved, but the results are great. Basically, it's all up to you what rock shape you want to create. Whenever you're creating an organic objects like the rocks or trees or something like that, I really recommend to go out and find some references. Gather some images of different shapes and formations of rocks. Find something that you really like and try to shape your rock like that. So you can do a little practice out of it, if you will, you can go ahead right now, find some references, find 2 or 3 types of rock and just create them. And then later in the sculpting phase, you can sculpt all 3, have some more experience creating these kind of rocks. It will make your scene much more rich, definitely. I will be working just with the one for the sake of time, but by all means, just go ahead, find some reference, and make it a little bit yours. Make a little bit of an exercise out of it, because, in the end, that's the approach that most of the artists use. So let's use the bisect tool, and before you use it, make sure you have everything selected, because the bisect tool will apply only to selected geometry. So let's press A to select all, and now just click and drag where you want to make the cut, and it'll create this kind of gizmo for you. You can click and drag the arrow to basically shift the plane of the cut. And right now this does nothing, because there are options for the bisect tool. If you don't have them expanded, just click here, and you can see you can choose whether you want to clear the inner part of the cut or outer. So, and the arrow direction determines which one is the inner and outer. So right now this is facing outwards, so let's clear the outer one, and you will see it open like this. To create a face there, you can check the fill checkbox, and you have now the clean cut. And the goal here is basically to cut through this rock from multiple sides, so we get rid of those like regular 4-sided faces and create these organically looking n-gons, which you can find a lot of times on various shapes of the rocks. So let's now continue, and every time you're finished with your cut, just press A to select all again, and just rotate the rock and find some other good place to cut. So I think on the other side here will be fine as well. So I will rotate it like this and do a cut here. And now this is facing in the opposite direction, and this is determined basically by where you started your cut, whether you're cutting from top down or the other way. So now I will choose to clear the inner and fill. Okay, so we have 2 cuts. Now I will make another one from the side like this. So let's press A, select all, do another cut. Let's click clear outer, and let's confirm the fill. Okay, now this doesn't look very organic or random at all. So I will just rotate it from the top view like this, select all, and do a new cut. So we kind of break this symmetry there. Let's clear the inner and fill. Okay, and let's do some more cuts here. And don't worry about going like too deep. You can always rescale the rock. The important thing right now is to find a shape that you really like. Okay, I really like the result I got here. All these faces are nice and irregular. There's no symmetry, nothing, and these are like nice surfaces that can form a rock easily. So I will just tab out now. Let's call this rock so we don't forget. And let's press the slash on a numpad to exit the local view, and I will leave it just in place for now. Now we'll proceed and create the base for a tree, and we'll use single vertex extrusion and skin modifier. So it's a well-known practice how to create a low poly tree. So we'll use this to create a base for sculpting. So let's press Shift A and add a single vert. And again, this is part of the extra objects add-on. If you don't see it here, go ahead in the preferences and activate the extra objects add-on. And now let's add the single vert. And immediately you are in the edit mode with one vertex in the scene, but I want to move the pivot point of this object to the side a little bit. So let's press tab to tab out in the object mode. And now let's go to the top view by pressing 7 on a numpad. Let's press G and move it in the bottom left quadrant of this circle. So this is the place where the tree will be. And let's now rotate this a little bit and we can tab back in. And I don't want to go in the local view because the context for the tree is very important. The rest of the scene is important. You know how large the tree will be, where the branches are. So that's why I always try to create tree in their context, in their environment. And you know, creating a tree can be pretty random, but there are some things that are pretty common for a tree. So again, as with the rock, I really recommend just going out there, checking out some tree references, you know, to see the type of tree that you want to have near your tower, and then you can decide for yourself whether you are going to follow my instructions here and try to recreate what you can see on the screen, or whether you'll create something on your own. And I'll now switch back to the box select, and I will rotate the scene a little bit and extrude the first vertex. So let's press E and extrude it like this. And the reason why I'm rotating this, whenever I try to extrude like an armature of a tree in the 3D space, it's important to think of it as a 3D space, because if you just look from one side and extrude the shape of the tree, you will then have to handle, you know, distributing these branches in the third dimension. And that can be a little bit tedious. So most of the time, even though it might look a little bit more work, I try to rotate around the object and extrude the branches in the direction I want them to go actually in the 3D space. So right now I'll continue with the trunk like this. And now if you look, you will see that it's slightly tilted, because whenever you are extruding something and move it, it will align relatively to your view. So that's why if you want to go branches to go this way, for example, you can rotate your view and just extrude it that way, and you will see it aligns with your view rotation. So I will now go ahead and extrude few branches. And again, if you want, you can follow, or if you want some other shape of the tree, you can go ahead and look up some references. And here you can see how I'm rotating the view to achieve, you know, different directions for these branches. Okay, that's for the one. And let's do a larger one here on the other side, because if we look at the scene, there's pretty compositionally heavy element here, the tower, and I want to balance it out a little bit on the other side. And since the tree is kind of a thin object, you know, it doesn't have a lot of mass, it will just help to fill out like more space visually here with the branch, and that way balance out the composition. So let's do another extrusion here, and maybe we can move a little bit to the side here, maybe not so much. Okay, and here I want to go a little bit towards the tower like this. Okay, so I think I'm quite satisfied with this. This will serve as a nice base for a tree. The next thing we need to do is give it actually some volume, some mesh. And the easiest way how to convert this, of course, is to use the skin modifier. So let's go to the modifier tab and let's add a skin modifier here. And this will look ugly for a second, but we can tap right in, press 8 to select all, and press Ctrl A, which is a little bit counterintuitive shortcut, but basically it modifies this mean radius on the vertex information. So let's press Ctrl A and scale this down like this. So we are targeting the thin branches there. We are basically looking for like the final thickness of these branches. And now we can hold Z, toggle the X-ray, and select the joints on these branches to make them a little bit thicker there. And continue this way all the way down until we hit the trunk and make it really wide. So let's select these joints right there. And let's make them a little bit larger. So press Ctrl A. And we can switch back to the medium point. So hold period on a keyboard, switch to medium point just to be safe. And let's scale this up tiny bit, not too large. We still want this to be fairly thin on the branches. And now select these like main joints here. And let's make them quite larger. So press Ctrl A and scale this up like this. And right now we can just make the bottom really large like that. And since we want more material to work with down there, we can just press E then Z and extrude this down. So the root vertex goes a little bit more like inside the terrain. And now it's time to modify the tree a little bit. So if you want to change a shape, or if you see some irregularities, now is the time to make the changes. And another important thing with the skin modifier is sometimes it can produce glitches, and especially if you create a mesh in this way where you just randomly extrude things in multiple directions, sometimes the skin modifier might not handle that very well. So let's hold Z, toggle the X-ray, and we can inspect this whether we created some glitches. And I don't think so, which is kind of sad because I really wanted to show you how this can break. So maybe let's try to break it on our own. Okay, so here's the place where I was able to push the vertex around and really create a combination of angles that can break and leave your mesh open like this. So, if you see something like this, you can just go in and move the vertex around until you find the place where it just works. And it's all closed and manifold. So that's just a little warning. Skin modifier can break sometimes when you make really weird angles. And most of the time when you have more vertices extruding in a similar direction, where there are very steep angles there. So let's leave it like this for a second, and now we can tab out. And one more thing I want to do is to add a subdivision modifier, because I don't want to end up with a low poly tree. I want some material for sculpting. So let's press Ctrl 2 in this case to apply a subdivision modifier with 2 levels of subdivision. And we can check our model again if something broke, because it might be visible more with the subdivision modifier active, and I can already see there's a problem here. So we'll need to move this vertex to the side, and you can see how the skin modifier regroups and how the subdivision modifier reapplies, and you can, clean up your model. This is not great as well. You can see there's a little bit of a break there, so you can move it to the side. And it wouldn't hurt to make these tips of the branches, these endpoints, a little bit thinner, because I really don't like how this looks. So press Ctrl A after selecting them and make them a little bit thinner. And not too much, we'll need to leave some material there. Okay, this looks great. And here I probably want to make this a little bit thicker because I have a plans there which you don't know yet about, but trust me, we'll need some more mesh there. So let's make this part here a little bit more thick, and maybe here as well. Okay, this looks quite alright so far, I would say. The modifier looks like it applied correctly everywhere. So right now we can leave it like this, and let's call this 3. And I will mention once again how this approach, extruding the vertices and applying skin modifier with subdivision, can be a great way how to create base meshes for sculpting. Imagine you would need to do something organic, like, you know, some lizard or something. This is the great way how to just extrude the bone structure of the animal or that organic shape or something, you know, then apply variable thickness by Control A, and then applying, you know, subdivision, tweaking it a little bit, then applying all the modifiers, and you're left with a custom mesh. Then you can further sculpt on or modify. So really great way how to create the base meshes. And let me please just make this a little bit thicker. So let's leave the tree like that for a second. And now I want to create a little bit of a terrain here. So let's find that circle that we created before to frame the scene. That's the circle right here. And let's go into the edit mode by pressing tab, and I will toggle the X-ray so you can see it here. And now to create the mesh there, we can just fill it with F, but that wouldn't work that much because we want to create the terrain. We need some mesh there, and the circular mesh doesn't work very well with either subdivision modifier, you know, and modifying the mesh to create bumps, all that stuff we need to create. So we need to fill this with quads, and it's very easy to do here. You basically need to grid fill, and that's the option that can be found in the face menu under the grid fill, or you can just press Ctrl F for a quick way for the same face menu and click grid fill, and it will fill your circle and connect these vertices. And now I'll just need to subdivide this. So let's right click and subdivide, let's say 2 times. So click once again and subdivide. That'll be enough for the terrain. So I will now hold Z and toggle the X-ray once again. And here we can try and create some bumps. Nothing too crazy, just to give this like an illusion of a little bit uneven surface. So let's press O to enable proportional editing here. And let's click one of these vertices there, press G, then Z. Let's increase the fall off with the mouse wheel a little bit. Let's create a bump like this. And you know, you can go around your scene and sometimes push it down, somewhere push it up. So it's a little bit of an uneven surface. And again, you can modify the fall off with the mouse wheel. So you can create few of these like smaller bumps here and there. Okay, something like this. And again, nothing too crazy. I'm okay with the terrain looking like this so far. And let's actually call this ground. So the environment blockout is basically ready. This is all we need to model before sculpting. So the next chapter will be on sculpting. But before we proceed, I want to prepare this a little bit so we don't have to like sculpt these little pieces in place and, you know, navigate all around the scene. So let's just separate some of these objects and put them in their separate collection so we can access them and sculpt them in comfort. So right now, let's just select one of these shingles. Doesn't matter which one, they're all the same link to duplicate. Let's press Alt D and move it to the side a little bit. And we can see this relationship line right here. So that suggests we need to unparent this. So let's press Alt P to clear parent and just click clear parent. And you know, don't worry about the transformation or the location, just leave it there. Right now, select one of these logs, Alt D, do the same thing and unparent, Alt P, and clear parent. You can choose to clear parent and keep transformation if you don't want it to jump all around the place and stay on the place where you left it when you duplicated it. Next, we'll need this rock. We'll just leave it in place and move it to a separate collection and then, distribute it around the scene. So let's leave it like this. The next thing we'll need is the curb here. So let's select one of those and move it to the side. And that one isn't parented to anything. So let's just leave it like this. And right now, just alt the rock here to separate it. And select all of these objects that you just separated. And let's press M and click New Collection to create a new collection. And let's call this Sculpts. Okay, and now just disable the main collection here. Click the Sculpts collection and select all of those. Press Alt G to reset their location on the 0 and Alt R to reset their rotation as well. So right now these are all still linked duplicates to that original objects. Whatever we do to them in terms of a mesh modeling or sculpting, it will happen to the other ones as well. So right now we can just stretch them out around the scene a little bit. So let's select the curb here, press G then Y and move it to the side a tiny bit. Now select the log, press G then Y, move it here, and the shingle, press G then Y and move it somewhere here. And that one has a slightly different rotation, so let's press R, Y and 90 degrees to place it aligned with these other ones. Let's zoom in a little bit, or you can select all and press period on a numpad to focus your view around them. So basically this is our scene prepared for sculpting. We'll take on them one by one and create additional details, textures and stuff like that. So yeah, see you in the next chapter.